Welcome back, fellow jazz bums. We are coming back and doing record of the week. This week we are doing Miles Davis Bitches Brew. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. We're going to drop a link to the Jazz Bums Discord. Come check us out there. And then also we live stream every Friday. We are actually recording this on our live stream right now. So you can come participate on the next one as well if you'd like to. With that, I'm going to kick it over to Felipe to get us started.
Hey, Mike, Chris, Nicole, Dave. I wish Rob was here too, but let's get going. It was an obvious choice, right? We were like, dude, you got to do something, and I think Bitches Brew was just the record to talk about, right? So before we get any history, any background, or anything, I'd like to ask you guys very briefly, okay, not just so we can stay focused here. How was your first contact with Bitches Brew? How did you feel about it?
All right. Well, Felipe, pick somebody.
Yeah, go ahead. You.
Me? All right. Well, yeah. I got into Miles not through his later. I mean, I would consider this as later stuff. And I didn't have initial interest in it. The style didn't really call to me at first. So my first reaction to Bitches Brew was, pretty lukewarm. I just really didn't gravitate towards it. Mm-hmm. Now, my opinion of it has changed since then, but that was my first reaction.
Okay. What about you, Chris?
So Bitches Brew was the first jazz record I ever got. I think I bought it like in 1998 or something. Got a CD. That and, I've sold 100 times, but that and the Herbie Hancock record were the only two jazz records I listened to until the year 2000. 2020. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I loved it for the very first time I heard it. It's maybe my favorite jazz record. It's definitely top 5. So yeah.
Cool. What about you, Nicole? How did you get into Bitches Brew?
How I got into it. I used to, back in 1970, when that record came out, I was 18 years old. And I remember seeing it in Rolling Stone magazine, or at that time, it was more like a paper that indicated it's like, big ad saying, Bitches Brew, Miles Davis wanted to make the best rock and roll record that anybody's ever heard. Exactly. That record came out in what?
70.
March of 1970.
Yes.
I saw Bitches Brew opening up for the Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot related to it, and we're going to go over it for
my
sure.
My impression was, at that point, I was still pretty much a rock and roll person. And it was an eye opener, that's for sure. So, yeah.
What about you, Dave? How did you first listen to Bitches Brew, and what did you think about it?
Well, being a guitar guy, I was into John McLaughlin, and that's one of the reasons I gravitated to this record. Obviously, the artwork too. So it's one of the early jazz records I bought, similar to Chris. And yeah, the guitar work. My mind was blown when listening to this record for the first time, because I really didn't have anything to compare it to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So for me, I was like, damn, because I had heard some of the early Miles,
right,
and some of the quartet, and then this was another realm. And I went to this first before going to In a Silent Way.
Right.
That was a whole nother thing. But this record is it's hard to top with
it is
sometimes.
I agree with you, and to me it was like late 90s, I think, but it's probably have the same version that Chris bought, the CD, the double one, the Legacy, with the extra track Pharaoh.
Yep.
And I was basically going to this CD live bookstore. There was a huge mega store they had, and every week I was buying something that was on sale. So all these legacies were there. I bought first Kind of Blue, just because I gravitated towards that cover, and then I got Miles in the Sky and Jack Johnson, and I think Bitches Brew I bought right after Jack Johnson by coincidence. And I think Jack Johnson has more structure, so Bitches Brew struck me by the lack of structure, quote unquote, in a sense, and I think that was quite interesting and challenging and attracting and dangerous. That had this mystique, right? So as Dave really well put out, let's start by the cover, right? The cover was a drawing by Marty Clarwine, and if you put those side by side, it's like dark and bright, mysterious and open, candid and challenging, and this communion between man and nature, right? It's about communion, black and white, nature, human. So there's a lot of that in that cover, and he did many covers. Do you guys know any other covers done by that artist?
No.
Joe Beck. I think about that drawing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, or look, you don't have to go that far. Look at this guy here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Or
Great
don't look at
point.
that guy. Actually, it's the same character from Beaches Brew. She's right here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
She is the same character. So so the cover I think was a big attraction to start with, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So Beaches Brew came out in 1970. It was a record that's being built, developed over since 1968, early 69.
Right.
The Silent Way sessions actually encompass a lot, right? Silent Way was recorded over the period of a year. So Silent Way derived Fears of Kilimanjaro. Also some tracks on Nefertiti, right?
yes.
It's this there. And kind of the rehearsal for Beaches Brew, the whole electric experiment, which started on Miles in the Sky.
Right.
And there is some stuff from Miles in the Sky that's actually in Beaches Brew. So Beaches Brew was slowly, I think it was a laboratory from Miles to 68 to 70. So to say that it was because of Clyde Davis or it was a sell-out, I think it's too much of a stretch, right? Especially for a guy that recorded the Snow White theme, to say that Beaches Brew was a sell-out is kind of weird to say. So it was something that he had a plan, and look at those sessions. You think of Kind of Blue, he just gave his music to the musicians. Here he just gave, I want the drums to sound like a thunder or whatever. There was not much direction there. And it was recorded in only 3 days. And the record has 6 tracks, which are Pharaoh's Dance, Beaches Brew, Spanish Key, John McLaughlin, Miles Runs the Voodoo Down, and Sanctuary, right? And especially tracks like Miles Runs the Voodoo Down and Sanctuary, they were leftovers from the first quintet, from the second quintet. They had already been playing live in concerts, like the jazz festival,
Monterey.
not Monterey, the other one.
Montreux.
No, I'm so sorry, Mike.
Newport.
Near you, the
Newport.
Sorry, Newport
Yeah,
69. They were already playing songs like Sanctuary, and Sanctuary actually used to be a ballad, and it's the more off track from the whole record, if you think about, right? So I think it was really revolutionary. It's a record that's really broken down. There's a lot of editing there, especially on Pharaoh's Dance, which was never ever actually played live. They never played Pharaoh's Dance live. From those 20 minutes, there's 19 cuts, which is quite impressive. And you can hear the cuts, right? Initially, you might think it's sort of annoying, but no, there's shifts in there. And Ben just played. All the bits and pieces were put together by Theo Macero in the studio, which probably has a much bigger role in the recording of the record than what we can even assume. He was actually the guy that pieced everything together, organized it, and I think there's some quite interesting things about it that we should go over them. And let's start with the first track, Pharaoh's Dance. How do you guys like it?
So it's my, Bitches Brew is my favorite track. Pharaoh's Dance is my second favorite, but they're neck and neck. And the thing that the record's just striking in so many ways. When you're listening to it, it's kind of like an assault on your senses, right? Miles's horn when it's dead silent, or there's just a little bit of guitar, whatever going on, and he just because in there with that and it's just like echoing across the sound stage, man. It's just so fucking trippy and awesome. I mean, yeah. So that's my impression. It's fucking great.
Yeah.
I think it's a great track. I mean, the way that I've approached Bitches Brew, because I mentioned at the opening that I didn't gravitate to it, and it was because it was electric. And when I was it like my journey to get to Bitches Brew took me a little longer because I came in through like big band Sinatra stuff, and when I came in and I was interested in his earlier stuff just much more. So I was just ignoring it. Really, it wasn't that I didn't like it. I just wasn't really into that stuff, and I just thought I'd get there at some point. It took me essentially like up until like maybe like this past year where I've really started to think Bitches Brew is maybe the coolest record I've ever heard. I think it is like at that level. Like, to me, I don't even know how to articulate the feeling of the space that it occupies when I put it on in my house. Like, it changes like the environment completely. And it feels like it takes me to a time period, 1970. And it's just unbelievable. Like, it just is a cool vibe, for lack of a better way to describe it, to just be a part of. And I feel like this opening track just sets that. And like, I will put this, I put this album on and just like have it on in the house. And like, that's like the vibe. And like, my wife and I are just like walking around doing our thing. And like, this is what's there. And it's like, it feels like it's a, although like some people may say like, oh, this might be a little out there, might be a little dissonant, might be a little challenging. I don't know, like the way that we experience it when I put it on, like, honestly, it's like a welcoming, like hip, like there are people around, like it just creates like this atmosphere. That's what it is. It's like, it creates a super cool atmosphere. And, and that's what I've really recognized about this record. And that's how I kind of use this record in my life. So I love it. And this first track sets the tone.
Right. Nicole, Dave, how do you guys feel about Pharaoh's Dance?
Well, to me, that whole Bitches Brew is like a composition, a complete composition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to individual tracks, it feels like it is all blended into each other.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar, Nicole, in the fact that this is a record. When I put this on, it's going to be, I'm playing the whole thing.
Yeah, to me, it's a concept record.
It's getting jammed.
Right, right.
Like a Hendrix record.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. So the way I see it, I think Pharaoh's Dance is kind of interesting because there's so many like random elements going on. There's like build up, right? There's not a structured melody. There's not a structured rhythm. I mean, it's all about rhythm. Sorry, there's not a melody or harmony. It's all about rhythm.
Rhythm, yeah.
And instruments building up. It's like creation of life, elements coalescing, get into this huge mass that it takes over.
Right, because you have two drummers, right?
Yes, two drummers. We have two drummers, two bass, and two keyboards. You have two rhythm sections, one on each side, doing completely different things.
Right.
But complement each other and feeling it. And you have Miles kind of going with his horn all over the place, in a sense, building this whole thing. And it's a comparison that's frequently made, and it's very true. It's Rite of Spring right there.
Yeah.
Pharaoh's Dance is Rite of Spring. It's like so many parallels there with the building of life and creation and chaos, going to this huge mass. So it's Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. A lot of people, a lot of reviewers, a lot of writers always go back to that reference because it's neck and neck. It's a huge parallel there. And what he's doing, especially the cuts, right? You go about like 10 minutes when they're going in a way that everything stops and then he stops playing with echoes. I mean, it just explores and experience. It's a mind-blowing experience. I think Pharaoh's Dance is just like a masterpiece in a sense, right?
Yeah. And so the next track, Bitches Brew, I mean, like I said, it's my favorite, and my favorite. I mean, there's so much I love about the record, but like Benny Maupin's bass clarinet playing, I think that's why I love the bass clarinet so much. It's like one of the first things that really struck me in the music period was that, you know, the bass clarinet on the record. But yeah, Pharaoh's Dance into Bitches Brew. I mean, it's almost like it's one whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's not, but it just
Yeah.
just the record flows. I mean, Tio Macero, you know, somebody mentioned that. Bandy mentioned that, you know, it was revolutionary and that he used the studio as like an instrument, right? I mean, that, you know, that wasn't really done at that point. So think about all the records that have been, you know, where they've edited in the studio, messing with tape, or now, you know, digital, it's like commonplace, but it was at the time.
Yeah, but I think it's cool to think too. I mean, I think Miles was one of the first guys to splice tapes on around about midnight. Like, you know, combining different cuts. But on Beaches Brew, they go overboard. They just remove even like rhythm sections, and it gets, you know, it's just a different level of cut and paste and use of the studio. So I think John is absolutely right on the way, and that song is just so big, right? So I think I can see why in live versions they will go shorter, around about 13, 15 minutes, but in the studio it never felt, you want more. It's just unbelievable how the studio version is just so incredible, so incredible.
Just the live performance were pretty much the same way the way the record flows.
Yes.
Well, I was going to ask, didn't they use some overdubs and like special, you know,
effects?
Effects.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's lots of reverb, you know, reverb chamber going on in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Probably back those days, electronics are not as sophisticated as it is now.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think Miles had his horn hooked up to an electronic passage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
did they? I don't know if anybody like knows this off the top of their head, but I think I read that they used overdubs and they also played with tape speed as well.
Yeah.
On Beaches Brew?
I think so. Yeah, at like certain times, like I think there were lots of different cuts and different elements that they used to play around with, like all the different takes.
Yeah, no. So pretty much once they recorded, it was everything Tio Macero. Even some of the musicians, they didn't recognize their own playing after listening to the final record, which is something quite interesting.
Yeah.
To listen to.
He did looping too, which is difficult back then because it's not like you could just copy and paste a loop like you can today, right?
Okay.
Like
exactly.
You had to
He did a lot of records.
Record it, you know.
Yeah. Oh,
so, yeah. He did a lot of records with Miles. So they were very comfortable working together.
Yeah. So one of the records they really kind of started doing this kind of was on Silent Way, right? So the first track, Peaceful, if you listen to it, I mean, it opens after like a minute or so. Miles kicks in, but he's not playing a melody or a riff. He's just soloing. Yeah. And if you go to the CD box with the complete Silent Way sessions, there is a first cut with the actual rhythm section, which they completely removed from the final cut that's in the record, which is interesting. Wow. There's a bass line there. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
So they have been doing that since like '68 or so.
Yeah, it's a multi-track recording, man. You know.
Yeah, they could do whatever they wanted for sure.
Yeah, they can. I mean, that was an advantage that came about when multi-track came along, because, you know, when Rudy was recording shit to 2-track, there's no mixing afterwards, right? Like you're mixing live, and that's what you do with multi-track. You just record every instrument on a separate track, and you can delete it, you can turn it up, you can turn it down, you can tweak it, you can do, you know.
Oh yeah.
Modern mastering, right?
Oh yeah. No, that was it. That's amazing. So
I saw a lot of parallels later on with Ornette Coleman's science fiction. You know, a lot of the stuff that Miles did. He didn't do a lot of obviously with the baby crying or whatever that science fiction had. But you can see the influence that Miles had in.
For sure.
Coleman.
Oh yeah,
that's a fantastic record, Nicole.
Oh yeah, one of my all-time favorites.
This is a classic anecdote that John Bandy's saying that
here's the actual letter.
Yeah. Okay, let's get you big, Felipe.
Yeah. Here's the actual.
Yeah.
What book was that from, Felipe?
Felipe, can you read what? So can you set this up for us?
Yes, yes. So this is the Beaches Brew 40th anniversary. There's two boxes of Beaches Brew. One of the
Oh,
complete
that's the
sessions.
CD. Okay.
That's the 40th. So there's two boxes. One of the complete sessions,
Uh-huh.
which is not so complete because they chopped that so much. There's no like takes. It's just yeah. This is the 40th, which has some outtakes, has the original record, and has two concerts: Tanglewood Live 1970 and a DVD with a Copenhagen Live in '69. So this here has Miles just called and said he wants this album to be titled Beaches Brew. Please advise. And then Tio Macero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously within the time period, this was a pretty controversial thing.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
no, for sure, for sure. And he did it. And you know what's the funny thing? When Herbie Hancock wanted to release Sextant, they went to a label meeting, and they no way wanted to release that kind of music. And they actually brought Beaches Brew to the meeting and said, "This is what Miles Davis just released.
All right.
Let me put this out." That's how it worked. And I like these pictures here too.
Yeah, this is the CD set there.
Yes, that's the Beaches Brew 40th. Yes.
So that's
Huh.
cool. I'll have to get that. Yeah.
I need to get that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool and it's fairly inexpensive.
So I have a question for y'all too.
Yeah.
And it's kind of related. It's kind of this will come into it, but so I've had conversations lately with some folks about or I've interacted with YouTube videos about like who are the most innovative players in jazz history, or the most important, and and so Miles was on a list, but and I heard this tonight too, that Miles has this reputation not for really inventing anything, but just stealing things that he's seen elsewhere, and so I don't know, like, is this the first electronic jazz record? No, right? But I think that for me, I think that's unfair. I think yes, he found cool shit and incorporated it into his music, but I don't know, like, what do y'all think about that?
I don't really dissect it in that regard. I feel like he was an artist of his time, and he was a contributor as well as somebody who was influenced by his peers, and he put together, and moved forward a certain, style and thought and with his music. And I don't really need to go any deeper than that. I wouldn't want to say it. I mean, yes, I do feel like attributing like the lineage of how the genre advances is important, but I don't. I guess I don't think of it as a negative in any way. I just think he was an artist in the 1970s, and he was being influenced by all his peers, and he was a leader, and he was wise and smart enough to understand how to experiment with this stuff in a way that really resonated with people. And yeah, I mean, in terms of fairness of him being on Columbia, having larger reach, those are valid points, but I don't really focus on those types of things.
Yeah, it's just he wasn't just influenced from jazz; he was influenced from rock and roll, and
everybody
people around him. Betty Davis, that was, having him.
Well, yeah, I knew he wanted to play
with certain crowds, and he wanted to do something different, and he wasn't afraid to do it. And we're all happy that he wasn't afraid to move forward, keep doing new things, and looking on the corner, and all these things.
Yeah, and if you look at it, right, he was on the 40s doing bebop with Charlie Parker, and then he did a no net, he did a Birth of the Cool, and then he went modal, and then he went post-op bop with the second quintet, and then he went electric, and he ended up doing hip hop, which if you get a hip hop record now, it sounds amazing compared to what's been done.
And that's a good point, Felipe. I've read his book, and it's, he knew when he got to New York that Juilliard was not his priority. Finding Bird was his priority.
52nd Street, West 52nd Street.
Exactly, but I think in terms of influence, in terms of being bold and being able to pick the right people and conduct them, because it's a point that we were talking the other day, right? If you look at the guys there, so Wayne Shorter, Weather Report, Zawinu had his Mahavishnu Orchestra, Chick Corea had his own thing there as well. And those guys played together many times, but they never sounded like they sounded in Beaches Brew.
Yeah, and Alex made a good point in the comments about
Yeah.
Zawinul's compositions.
Right.
So exactly, even in the track Miles does not play, right, which is John McLaughlin, it still has a cohesion and structure that those guys playing together never got in their solo bands.
He wanted to play with Hendrix. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
that never came about because unfortunately Hendrix passed away.
I know, just
Yeah.
imagine that.
I mean, they were friends because Betty introduced him to Hendrix, and he was actually teaching Hendrix how to read and write music because Hendrix didn't know how to read and write. Yeah. So and two of Miles' greatest compositions there influenced by Hendrix, right? Here, Miles runs the Voodoo Down is completely a Voodoo Child riff, right?
Yeah.
It's Voodoo
I
Child.
also think he was. They were influenced by King Crimson because King Crimson was here in 1969.
And listen to Pink Floyd songs like "Careful That XL Gene" and stuff like that. Right. There's exactly like Beaches Brew.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That kind of rhythm, those passages. It's very similar.
And if you look in the jazz vein, and I know that there's been comparisons, I don't think they're correct, but I do feel like you could see within the jazz vein, you have Woody Shaw with Blackstone Legacy in 1969, and these are, jazz lineages that I think you can see the progression to 1970s Bitches Brew as well. So like, it's not just like Crimson and what's going on, outside of the genre. I do feel like jazz also is being, impacted by that. And also, I mean, we didn't even mention, but the album before this, In a Silent Way, right? I mean, this is a it's obviously it's a precursor in terms of chronology, but it's also a precursor in terms of the progression and next step with electric, and how Miles is using it. So so those things are taken into account as well.
Yeah,
the other thing I wanted to say is, talking about Zawinul, he is the glue that made fusion stick together, man. Him and Wayne Shorter, but mostly him.
Yes.
I mean, Weather Report was Zawinul. Wayne Shorter played what he wanted him to, basically, and he was fine with that, and so I think that lineage is there. Miles popularizing the electric stuff more is there, because you look at everything from like 71 and 72, everybody's doing on electric records. Like, it's just, once Bitches Brew happened, everybody, I mean, Cannonball's doing that shit, everybody's putting a Rhodes piano in their quartets and quintets, right? So
yeah. And Silent Way has three pianos, right? It has electric piano, regular piano, and the organ. Yeah.
So what was the connection here? And I don't mean to deviate too much, but I've heard this before. Is it that Gil Evans and Hendrix and Miles were going to work together? Was that like the connection?
Gil Evans with Hendrix? No, it's Betty Davis. Gil Evans was going to work with Hendrix. I think they ever started, if I'm not mistaken. But Miles was a different thing. It was not related.
Yeah. But it's a great record overall. It's.
Oh yeah.
I
mean, like someone said in the comments, this is just some of the best cover art on any record ever.
Yeah.
Like I said, the Abraxas and.
For sure.
Yeah.
And Miles, I mean,
actually Santana's first record too.
Yeah. And Miles, he borrowed from Hendrix on Voodoo Child, right? And also with was on the first record by Jimi Hendrix. He's also on Mademoiselle Mabry. Mademoiselle Mabry is a tribute to Hendrix as well. I forgot the name of the track.
To hear a lot of Miles' influences also in Santana's and Caravanserai and Welcome.
Yeah, I mean, the Wind Cries Mary. Sorry, I just remembered. Mademoiselle Mabry is exactly like Wind Cries Mary by Jimi Hendrix. Awesome. If you play the riffs, it's the exact same riff that Miles is playing.
Roberto, don't even say that shit, man. If it does, like, if
We're talking art here, Roberto, not MoFi.
I know,
Or-
but I'm
or
just saying, like,
Sonic,
I've sworn off one steps in UHQRs, but if people come out and it's like, oh my god, the one steps like the ultimate edition,
Yeah.
it sounds better than anything else, I'm gonna buy the fucking
Yeah.
thing.
Well, I got the 2 MoFis already, and I already have the MoFi. What do you call
I
it?
don't.
Yeah.
One step or pre-order.
Okay, so
Well,
let's go back to record 2.
Okay.
What do you mean? Well, we could talk about everything, Felipe. It's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's fine.
We should talk about pressings, but we can definitely. But yeah. So, but let's finish up the songs.
Okay.
Yeah. So record 2, a lot of people say record 2 could be separate from record 1, and I think most of us have this feeling. Record 2 sounds more structured than record 1. It sounds more like actual song, right? Which I think is interesting. Maybe it could be like a double, like a speaker box, The Love Below, something like this, like 2 separate records put in a single package.
Right.
But I think record 2 has some weird stuff, but also some of the best. It starts with Spanish Key, right? With Spanish Key has a killer bass line that really is hypnotic, drags you down. This probably has some of Miles' best solos ever. Miles' solos there, it's like amazing. They're really good. And Chick Corea also goes like nuts on the electric piano on that track.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a very strong track in terms of structure and playing. And yeah, I keep going back to it. I think it's a really great track. How do you guys like it?
I mean, I think it's my favorite one on the second record.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just love how this band just got in this wild groove, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just like Mike said, he puts it on and just, you let it roll. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I think that record plays better now with the CD format, because it flows from one to the next.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to get up and turn
The record over
and everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point, though, because I mean, that's how I listened to it for the first, 20 years.
I think a lot of times with a lot of 2 record sets back in the day, I remember it was like, okay, I made it through the first record. I'll wait till get to record 2.
Yeah,
and then never listen to record 2.
Never get to listen to record 2.
Exactly, 100%.
Well,
Or I heard the song on the radio. Oh, I have that record. It's like shit.
Yeah. But yeah, and then okay, so let's go to the next. Next is John McLaughlin, which is the shortest track there, 7 minutes.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of interesting jam in there. There's no Miles playing. It's only guitar, pretty much, John McLaughlin. And even John McLaughlin didn't know how the track would be titled. I think it was Miles we just call it John McLaughlin because it's a guitar solo.
Yeah,
so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then actually this track was supposed to be the last movement on Pharaoh's Dance. On Beaches Brew, sorry.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the time for that. They did a space. So they just chopped it and pushed to the. So it's kind of an odd thing there. I mean, it's a really cool track, but it's like totally floating there out of the blue. Right?
Yeah, and like I said, he's why I went and sought this record out, was John McLaughlin, because I was listening to stuff he was doing with John Sermon. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. Like, you got this British guy throwing down on the saxophone with a guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was the first time I really had any electric guitar in jazz that I was listening to. I was like, well, if he's with Miles Davis, then this has got to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Do you mean like distorted electric guitar? Like,
yeah, like with with some effects.
Okay. Yeah.
Not Wes Montgomery stuff.
Right,
You
right.
know what I mean? I'm like,
Right.
okay, this is some real shit. And when I got this record, I played this. My friend Joe Law was like, "What in the hell are we listening to? This is great." So
I think a lot of people have that reaction to that record when you first put it on.
Yeah, everybody says this is great. Holy shit.
A lot of folks, don't like this record, and that's fine. So for you, people that don't like this record, I mean, if you're watching this, that's cool. But like, I've also heard arguments that if you recommend this to somebody that's going to turn them off to jazz, and this is what ruined jazz and all this kind of stuff, you know. I just don't. Carolina's having problems. I just don't.
Sorry.
It's all good. I just don't agree with that because this was so many people's entry point to the music that I know of. So you know, if you're coming from, yeah, I've been listening to hard bop for 20 years, and then you get to this, then sure, I could see why you would say, hey, people should listen to this stuff first. And it is valuable to have those lists of records that are accessible. If somebody doesn't like this kind of music, that's fine. But I do think that it's a record that can bring a lot of people to the music too.
Right.
Yeah, Chris, the natural progression. I mean, with jazz, you
exactly
start it like I did. I started with the early bop.
Yeah,
exactly.
I got into hard bop, and then I got into the avant bop. Then I got into the avant-garde. Then I got into free jazz. Now I'm beyond free jazz. I'm in the
Well, I went from
Japanese
this,
stuff.
from Bitches Brew.
And I think John, on your comment, I'm not sure if Pharaoh's is a funky song because it's just. I think I would call it a mezz. It's a crescendo thing. I think Spanish Key and Miles Runs the Voodoo Down, they're way funkier because they have like bass lines and a more like structure. They're the songs that you probably can dance to in this record, right? Compared to Pharaoh's Dance in terms of being funky. That's I'll do
an interpretive dance to the entire Pharaoh's Dance when we get to. We should do it as a group.
Yeah,
the three of us can do an interpretive dance when we get to 10,000 subscribers.
Yeah, but
you in?
Yeah, oh yeah. So then we get to Miles Runs the Voodoo Down, right?
Yeah.
Which was actually Miles was playing the song with the quintet. They play in like a faster time, and then Don Elias actually suggested to Miles to go slower on a type of a Louisiana kind of marching band, New Orleans marching style. That's why it's got this muddy, slow, hypnotic, and there's some killer trumpet solos. They're very dangerous, very in your face. I think some of the most aggressive and coolest like Miles playing that you can possibly get. It's on Miles Runs the Voodoo Down. It is threatening. It's like really is dangerous. But it's so cool. It's so attractive. It's such a song that sucks you in. I think it's probably the best song on the record in terms like being,
I'm gonna step away.
The best song on the record. You think so, Felipe?
I'm saying probably on Miles. I think it's Miles playing probably.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
His solos there are very sharp, very sharp.
I'm not going to argue with that.
No,
and kind of dangerous, and also I think the derivations live. Especially if you go to those records like the Japanese ones, the Ogarta and Pangaea, the variations that they do on this song there, it goes like wild. I think that's one of the cool songs in there. What do you think, Chris?
Agree. No, I mean I think it's cool. It's one of my lesser favorite songs on the record. I do definitely agree though that it's Miles has some great solos on it.
Yeah. That's his song, right? Miles runs the whole thing down.
But I mean, the other thing about Bitches Brew for me with Miles is on a lot of these tunes, he's doing the ultimate version of playing with space, right? Where the band plays for fucking 5 minutes without him, and then all of a sudden he jolts you out of your slumber of, you're stoned and confused, grooved out slumber with just these hard hits, and it's just perfect, Anyway.
Yeah, his timing was brilliant.
Oh my god, maybe it was Teo's timing too, though. I mean, to be fair,
right? But
it was the whole package.
But Miles had his say in all of that.
Oh sure.
So
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I also closing. We have a Sanctuary, right? Which is a Wayne Shorter composition, and is actually left over from the quintet. It's the quintet had played that song in 68, 69 in different variations, more like a ballad, slower. It's actually inspired by Frank Sinatra, Mike. So Wayne Shorter.
Hey now you're talking my language.
I forgot the name of the Sinatra song that Wayne Shorter is referring to. I'm gonna pull that out and let you know later.
Oh, let me see if I can find it. I'll look it up.
So yeah, it was highly influenced by Frank Sinatra. I can't remember from the top of my head right now, but it's cool because it starts super. So I think it's the more like structured song in the whole record, right? It starts like a ballad, super normal. There's this building there with Wayne playing, and it's typical Wayne composition. You can tell it's a Wayne Shorter song with that start. But then it kind of builds up and gets into the mass of chaos, right? Everything gets so intense, the drumming, the horns get in. And I think it's like, okay, guys, you made it to the end. Let's cool down, but no, let's boom. let's hit it to the very end. But I think it's a good closure. It's probably a song that looks like a leftover because it is a leftover. It's kind of displaced.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great closure. What do you guys think?
Well, I just looked it up. So the Frank Sinatra song in reference is "I Fall in Love Too Easily," which is a great track. And actually, it says here that Miles actually recorded it in 7 Steps to Heaven, and then Wayne Shorter's composition "Sanctuary" from Bitches Brew as well.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think that was great, Felipe. And we could talk about pressings. I don't even think we need to. I have like a 360 pressing from the first year it came out. I think it was so it's technically a second pressing. It's this one. Mm-hmm. This is sufficient for me. I'm sure that there's better pressings, but the way that I listen to this and experience it, like I mentioned, like I just put it on and it sets an atmosphere in my house. And not that I'm not actively listening, I am, but I don't know if I feel like I don't need any more than this at this point.
No, that's fine. Yeah, great.
Maybe I will. And I did want to mention maybe like how people approach this. And I'm not qualified to talk about how people should approach music, but I'll just say from my experience, one thing that, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, one thing that really does kind of help me discover music and it is the context of who's playing, what they're doing, and the year that it's happening. So we mentioned like there's Benny Maupin, Chick Corea, Wayne Shorter. They all have different groups. We like Benny Maupin and Lenny White are on this, and I mentioned that there's that Blackstone Legacy. They played with Woody Shaw. And it's like, so like once you start like making these connections, who's playing with what? Ron Carter played on In a Silent Way, and he didn't play on this. That was his last one. That's like an interesting data point. And then they bring in who do they bring in on bass on this? It's
Dave Holland.
Dave Holland. So like, and then knowing where like Dave Holland played with
Harvey Brooks. Harvey Brooks.
And Harvey, so one is playing electric. So Harvey Brooks plays electric, and Dave Holland plays acoustic. Yeah.
And Dave Holland played with Chick Corea.
Yeah. And Dave Holland plays. So it's just like, and we could go on and on and on because there's so many musicians here. But like, yes, like listen to the music. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I mean, that's ultimately the case. But I will say, like, a lot of times, the reason why I kind of focus on jazz is because I focus on these musicians. And I go down these rabbit holes of who they play, and it makes me kind of, I don't know, that's just how I kind of discover music. And you could see that when I go back to this Norman Granz stuff. You could see that when I move forward with the AACM stuff, what they're doing on Black Saint with the loft jazz scene in New York, when they go over to Italy. It's like, it's not, for me, it's all of that, like learning about all these artists, all these histories. And if you're just getting into jazz and you're coming in and you like the hard bop stuff and you're just learning about Art Blakey and you listen to Miles and you don't know any of these musicians that he's playing with and it sounds very different, that's fine. Like just leave it at that. But like there might be a point where like you do learn about these musicians and you're like, I get like this is so cool that like they're on this session and this is the producer, and then after this they go on to do that, and you start putting these pieces together. And again, that doesn't mean you like the music you like, but I feel like that when you connect it to that whole history, and we do that with rock, you do it with other genres too. But for me, that's what I love to do when I discover music. And when I was able to kind of do that with Miles, I don't know. I love Miles. I mean, I love I showed a record earlier on the live stream. I know this is going to be a snippet for people watching later, but I showed stuff that he was putting out in 51, 53. We were talking about Birth of the Cool, which is like late 40s stuff. And now we're talking about 1970s. And it's like that whole lineage, like it's all worthy of studying and learning about and listening to and having fun with, and that's what I like to do. So
you make it sound like homework, man.
Well, I'm just saying. So for people who they feel like this isn't their thing, it may not be your thing. It may never be your thing, but also it may be at some point, and it's worth just keeping an open mind with music.
For sure.
That's a great point. I mean, I was just kidding earlier. If you don't like this record, I don't care. Like what you want to like. We don't judge anyone about what they like. If Kenny G is your favorite jazz artist, that's great. Like, I'm not being facetious either. I'm like, serious. Like, who cares? But there's a couple of questions talking about pressings.
Yeah,
I have the MoFi. I think it sounds great. I had the regular like $20, $25 Sony Legacy before that. It sounded great. The CD I had in the 90s sounded great. Like what are y'all's pressing preferences or
I was just going to ask you. You beat me to the punch. I was going to ask you what you had.
Yeah.
The MoFi I've heard is really good from everybody that I've in the past heard from. I think maybe the same as Mike. Mine's the 1970 press. It's not a 2i, but it is the next label. But it's
the 360.
Yeah,
that is a repress from 1970.
That's what I have.
Yeah, Indiana press.
It might as well be an OG, basically.
Yeah, and it sounds phenomenal, and I'll never need another copy. I paid $15 for that at Lunchbox. I don't know, 6-7 years ago.
Yeah. I have the CD, the original CD, the Legacy CD. I have the Complete Sessions. I have this 40th, and I have the MoFi. I used to have a 360 label, so when I got the MoFi, I just passed it on.
Yeah,
it's I mean the MoFi is more refined, more detailed, but the 360 is pretty good as well. And I think just reinforcing what Mike said on the whole experience, right? I think when people say we mix rock with jazz, I think it's kind of weird because it's not rock and it's not jazz, but at the same time touches both. I think Beaches Brew is very focused on rhythm, so it's something that you actually feel. If you think, I'm not into Beaches Brew because I don't get it, I don't understand it, I think Beaches Brew is not something to be understood, it's something to be felt, right? I think that's pretty much what you're saying here. It's something that's going to bring you emotions. It's going to feel like, I heard this before. I never heard like this. I can't forget this rhythm here. It's catchy, or it just blew my mind. I think it's something that you feel. Don't worry. You don't have to get it. I think you don't have to understand it. You have to feel and like it. And if you didn't get it first time, give it a second time and see how it goes, But I think try not to judge it or to label or put in a box. Just be open-minded. And if you didn't like it now, maybe you're going to like it in 10, 20 years, or you're never going to like it. But it doesn't matter, I think.
Personally, I think you need to play that record loud.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's the way that band was.
Yeah. Yeah, and I listen to it in both ways. I mean, like the way Mike talks about using it, listening to it while you're doing stuff, and it's like the vibe in the room, and also just like turning the lights out and sitting alone, in the dark, listening to the whole fucking record. Pretty cool too.
Chris, isn't there an interview with Lenny White and about his drum that he used in this band?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. He was like, didn't he use like a giant bass drum or something?
Yes. Yeah. There's like a special bass drum that he made for
24
this.
inch or 26 inch or something.
Yeah. It's like made from like an oil can. It's like an oil can bass drum.
Does he still have it?
I don't know.
I think it might be in like a museum now, honestly.
Yeah, I know it's accounted for.
I think we talked about that when Kim McAuliffe talked to him 6, 7, 8 months ago.
Yeah.
That was a good interview. Yeah.
That was a good interview.
Now the other question was, have I ever listened to this record while tripping? And so I want to relate this to another record because they're both kind of equally important to me throughout my history. Pink Floyd's The Wall, right? I relate that record to this record because those are just kind of time period wise for me, how they related. And yes, listening to Pink Floyd, The Wall, and LSD is quite the experience. But listening to Bitches Brew on mushrooms is dude, like you start tasting the music and seeing it. So
Yeah.
Highly recommended.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So let's all go out in the woods in the dark and do mushrooms and listen to Bitches Brew.
On that note, should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, guys. Felipe, thank you for taking us through that. That was great.
Absolutely.
This is an album that I think we all love, and thanks for hanging out. Remember to like and subscribe. Please share this. Leave your comments below. Let us know what you think about Bitches Brew. And also, if you want to know what the next Record of the Week album is, join our Jazz Bums Discord. We have a channel dedicated to this. That's where we do our announcements. So that's linked in this description, or if you're watching this on the live stream, in the live stream description. So come there and you can see what the next week's record will be. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
And we'll let you know once we figure it out.
Yeah. See ya.
See ya.
Hey, that was great.
Yeah, good
All right,
job,
cool.
Felipe.